bring up politics with friends my age, I usually get the same reaction. An eye roll, maybe a laugh, and someone saying it's not that deep. But I'm here to tell you it is that deep. Politics aren't just waiting for us to grow up. They shape our jobs, our climate, our schools, our rights, right now. Being told to stay quiet doesn't protect us. Thinking we're too cool to get upset over current news doesn't save our reputations. It just keeps us from taking part in decisions that will define our livelihoods. So what if instead of turning away, we turn back in? What if we flipped the script, circled back to the issues people say aren't ours? What if we stopped treating these challenges like someone else's problem and recognize them as our own responsibility? Because the truth is, if we don't step in and claim a voice, the choices that shape our lives will be made without us. Now, I'll be honest, I've never been very good at pretending not to care. I'm the kind of person who notices when something's wrong and immediately wants to fix it. I'm the girl in the corner stressing about national policy, while most of my classmates are paranoid about our teachers' grading policy. And yes, this makes me deeply uncool at parties. But I mean, who wants to talk about how good Brad looks tonight when we could talk about long-term fiscal debt and intergenerational policy, right? Now, I don't bring up politics because I think I'm smarter or louder or better informed than anyone else. I bring it up because I know how easy it is to let things slide when they don't feel urgent yet. And I'm standing here not to lecture, but to say, if you've ever felt that quiet discomfort when something feels off and no one wants to talk about it, you're not alone. In fact, that feeling is the starting point, not the problem. I could sit here and spit numbers at you, but beyond the numbers is a deeper truth. Policy isn't just paperwork. It's a promise or a warning. Every bill passed today carries a shadow far longer than the careers of the people writing it. Climate inaction doesn't hit retirement-aged politicians first. It hits our lungs, our neighborhoods, our adulthood. Decisions on technology, education, and privacy aren't just theoretical debates for us. They're the conversations that will shape the way we live, work, learn, communicate, and even exist online. But all of these issues that we know wouldn't exist without one specific concept: democracy. But what does democracy really mean? Well, democracy is a system of government where political power is held by the people, who typically exercise it by electing representatives in free and fair elections. It's built on the principles of individual rights, the rule of law, and the will of the people to determine their own political, economic, and social systems. The will of the people to determine their own political, economic, and social systems. So really, democracy means stepping in. It means claiming a voice. It means advocating like our lives depend on it and fighting for what we believe in no matter the cost. Because the reality is, if our generation doesn't step forward, speak up, and demand action with real foresight, the laws being made now will become the limits we inherit. And we deserve better than a future designed by people who won't have to live in it. But speaking up is way easier said than done. After all, we've grown up in a world surrounded by problems. While our generation may not be the first to experience controversial executives, looming war, and economic uncertainty, we are the first generation to experience all of it in real time, at the click of a button. The weight of global crisis doesn't arrive filtered through textbooks and hindsight. It arrives through push notifications during class, headlines in between shifts, and videos online that make distant suffering feel uncomfortably close. We don't get the luxury of ignorance. We are constantly informed, constantly aware, and yet constantly told to stay disengaged. And that can be terrifying. But here's the part we don't hear enough. Civic engagement isn't some abstract concept reserved for adults in suits. It's a skill set. And like any skill, it starts small, builds locally, and gets stronger the more we use it. After all, we've already seen what happens when young people decide not to be complacent. Take Haley Hardcastle, a high school student in Oregon who noticed that mental health absences were treated like skipping class. She researched the law, she testified in front of legislators, and she told her story publicly. And because of that persistence, Oregon became one of the first states to allow excused mental health days in school. That wasn't luck, that was education meeting action. In New York, youth advocates have pushed for laws like the Safe for Kids and Child Data Protection Act, which aim to limit how companies can collect and exploit young people's data online. Teens testified, organized coalitions, and reframed social media regulation as a youth protection issue, not just a tech debate. In Montana, a group of teens brought the case Held versus Montana, arguing that their state's climate policies violated their rights to a livable future. And they won. It became the first court case in the history of the country to recognize that young people can legally challenge climate inaction based on how it will shape the lives they're going to live. But none of these people were world leaders or elected officials. None of these moments started with power or privilege. But they started with young people who refused to accept that their futures were too far off, too complicated, or someone else's responsibility. But what does that mean for the rest of us, especially those of us that aren't writing our own legislation or testifying in court? Well, it means that impact doesn't start at a national level. It starts with habits, with choices that we make every day. I grew up with advocacy baked into the everyday. I was taught to care for people beyond myself, to pay attention when things felt wrong, and to use my voice, even when it would be easier not to. For the last 18 years, I've lived with 3 words in my heart. 3 words my mom made sure I knew were the most important words to live by. Listen, learn, love. They sound soft, almost passive, but they're not. Listening means refusing to ignore harm. Learning means digging past comfort and convenience. And loving means acting, especially when it's inconvenient. So I took these words and I turned them into something more political, something active, something usable that you can take with you when you leave this room. See, study, show. See it. Pay attention to what's actually affecting your life. Climate change, reproductive rights, digital privacy, school funding. Notice the problem instead of scrolling past it. Study it. Go past the headline. Learn to spot bias, question outrage, and understand problems before reacting to them. Education is the difference between noise and impact. And show up. Showing up is my personal favorite. In September of last year, 6 classmates and I were tired of headline after headline announcing firearm violence across the U.S. So, alongside hundreds of other schools across the state, we organized a lunchtime protest and walkout to voice our frustrations with legislators who were ignoring the harm of loose gun laws. We marched through Santa Ana, we engaged our community, and we pushed for students to contact California State Senate to push for stricter legislation. And on October 20th, 2025, California AB 1127 was signed and passed into law. But you don't have to get legislation passed or plan a whole walkout to make a difference. Join student council, volunteer, fundraise, attend school board and city council meetings. Change doesn't happen where the cameras are. It happens when people bother to show up. None of these 3 things require perfection. None of it even requires being the loudest in the room. What it requires is refusing to disengage. Because imagine if none of these things had happened. High school students would still be getting backlash for experiencing mental health fatigue. Kids in New York and other states would be exposed to damaging content online. And young people, the people who will actually be affected by climate change, wouldn't be able to challenge laws that enable a further decline in the Earth's health. Because change doesn't happen when we're handed power. It happens when we practice taking it. And if we don't speak up and use our voices, our futures won't belong to us. Because politics aren't just something we grow into someday. They're something we're already living inside of. And if you take anything from this, it's that advocacy is cool. Engagement is cool. Caring is cool. And if you're still wondering whether youth advocacy matters, the answer is simple. It is that deep. Thank you.